Police officers of Reddit, what is the dumbest reason you have been called to a scene? I was dispatched to a house reference a reported vandalism to a vehicle. When I got there, the guy who called was standing by his car. I saw that there was no visible damage to the vehicle. His complaint was that dust picked by the wind was coming from his neighbor's yard and landing on his car. The guy actually wanted to file a criminal complaint. My first thought was maybe I was dreaming this nonsense. All I could do in response was stare at him, and I said absolutely nothing. The guy became uncomfortable and explained his complaint again. I couldn't help but just stare at him. At the time, I didn't think I could say anything to him that didn't sound insulting. I think he finally got it since he just went inside his house and never called us again. I'm a student, but I live in a well-to-do neighborhood, a block away from campus, where the people do not like having students around. One of my neighbors yelled at me and threatened to call the police because we put out our recycling on a 9 p.m. on Wednesday, because it gets picked up at 6 a.m. the next morning, and the wind apparently blew a piece of newspaper into their yard. Apparently we're garbage people because the wind took one tiny piece of our garbage and blew it into their yard. Not to mention the fact that everyone on the block had their recycling out, it wasn't necessarily our paper. Now that neighbor routinely moves our trash can from beside the shed and puts it right up against the back of my car. I've seen her do it a few times, and I can't figure out why she's doing it, if not to just inconvenience me. I would love for her to call the cops, just in the hope that someone puts her in her place. Not a cop, but an EMT. I was called to a sick person, which turned out to be a perfectly fine person that just wanted a medical checkup, and thinking EMTs were doctors we would just give him one for free. Took an intro to EMS course years ago, part of which consisted of listening to actual 911 calls. Hey. My friend, I really hurts. He needs ambulance. And gave a rural address. Ambulance response, and holy crap, dude had an arrow sticking out of his eyeball. Turns out it was a hold my beer reenactment of that whole shooting an apple off the dude's head. The arrow received 0 mentions in the call. I heard a 911 call where an old woman called the police because she couldn't open a jar. The woman actually sent the police to help. That happens more frequently than you would think. I was an intern with my local police department for about 4 months. Small town, about 10,000 people. Here's a list of stupid calls we got. Old woman couldn't back out of her driveway, asked for an officer to help spot her. Woman couldn't find out how to turn off her dryer, was worried about flooding. Old man's alarm clock went off and couldn't figure out how to turn it off. And was physically unable to bend down to unplug it. 17-year-old girl asked if there was traffic in town. That one kinda pissed me off. Old woman literally just asked for an officer to come over. Turns out she just wanted someone to talk to. And you know what? For each of these calls an officer was sent over to assist. A lot of people don't like cops, and sometimes it's deserved. But for the most part, cops are just normal citizens who want to help people. I may be wrong, but I've been told that the main reason cops go out for calls like the jar opening and alarm clocks are to also gauge whether APS needs to be called. Better to waste an hour of the cops' time now and find out that the caller can't safely feed themselves than to do a welfare check after no one's seen the guys for 3 weeks. This has been really pissing me off lately. People see the bad crap in the news about some horrible thing one police officer did, then they turn around and blame cops for being power-crazed bigots. This is simply not true. 9/10 cops are good people that are just looking to help people. Sure, that one might be a power-crazed bigot, but that's not because he is a cop. What we need to be advocating is better education and more transparent bureaucracy in the system. Edit: a lot of people seem to be fixated on my 9/10 statement. That was a figure of speech. Also, I never said there wasn't a problem, but everything that's been brought up I believe would be solved by my proposed solution, mainly the education part. Racism and bigotry is not born, it's taught. The issue is the system, not each individual cop. Obviously the behavior of individuals perpetuates that system, but the problem exists above and beyond the person that goes out in their squad car. The culture of police is the problem, and though I agree that most cops are good people, the system itself is flawed in such a way that it ends up often not mattering how the individual acts. I agree that we need better education and more transparent bureaucracy, though. At the apartment tower I worked security for, some Saudi royal family members called the cops because the hooker they hired took the money and ran. Cops said, "Sure, you can have the money back, but you have to admit to misdemeanor solicitation to do so." Before people ask, their cars had KSA, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, license plates and the Saudi royal family crest on it. Also, they admitted to what they did to the cops, so in order for the cops to take the theft report, they would have to include the solicitation report. Cops gave them a break by letting them all go. Edit, for everyone wondering, yes, they have diplomatic immunity. Those cops didn't voluntarily give them a break. You don't mess with people that rich if you care about your career and life. Saudi Arabian royalty don't forget, and they sure as hell don't forgive. Leo Dispatcher, here. A lady called into 911 to report her baby back ribs stole right off their grill, while another called in to report that a plane was flying low. Do I look like the FAA or Shane's ribs? We dispatched and aired lookouts on both. Deputies called into radio practically crying at 3 a.m. They were laughing so hard. When I confirmed the unit for larceny, she wants her baby back ribs over our radio. Responded to the outside of the county jail one time, LA County Twin Towers, and had to actually fight a guy trying to climb the fence into the jail. This may not sound like much until you realize we had to fight a guy in order to prevent him from entering the jail, then drive around the back and put him in jail. LA is freaking weird. Something similar happened to me. I was actually locked up in jail. I was a model inmate, and so I was put on trustee/inmate worker status, and one job I had was to bring out the garbage from the intake area to around the side of the jail to where the dumpsters are located. I was allowed to wear street clothes while doing community service. Anyhow, I dragged these bags of garbage around the jail to the dumpsters, and suddenly two police officers approach me and start yelling at me they are going to arrest me for trespassing. I laughed because I thought they were joking and continued throwing the bags in the dumpsters. That apparently pissed off the one, and he continues to handcuff me. He said I was under arrest for criminal trespass. It took me a couple minutes to convince them that I'm already in their jail. But I'd gladly leave the property and never come back if that's okay. They said no. I once called the police because there were hundreds of thousands of maggots covering a huge parking lot, and I was convinced there was a body in the nearby dumpster causing the infestation. I might have been drinking a bunch. Well, something has to have attracted some creepy crawlies. That's suspicion enough, and it's the police's job to check those things out. That's a good reason to call. Working front desk at a hotel. Buddy called 911 on me because I wouldn't give him a free upgrade. Soon to be police officer here. When I was doing an internship with the local sheriff's office, I was with one deputy and we got called out on a domestic disturbance. Before we could get there, a city police officer intercepted the call and took it, since it was just outside city limits and we were still 15 minutes away. So we continued to patrol the county when the same people called again, specifically asking for a deputy to come out to the scene. We get there and right off the bat this woman is going on about how when the city police officer he was very rude to her and she wanted us to go arrest him and have him fired for unpolicemanlike conduct. I'm not joking, I had to turn away to keep from laughing in this woman's face. She was very angry because he allegedly said the word frick in front of her daughter. Keep in mind this woman was using the word frick 3 or 4 times in each sentence. We pretty much told her that our department doesn't police other departments and that she should contact the chief of police and make a formal complaint. This did not sit well with her and she told us we needed to leave before she called the cops. Again, not joking, at this point the guy I was with couldn't take it anymore and told the woman that he was arresting himself and taking himself downtown, and we left trying not to bust out laughing. If everything goes right I will have some more stories once I get hired by the sheriff's office. Lady called because a cat was in her yard. Not attacking anybody or anything like that. It was just in her yard. Even better is that we had to do a report every time we responded to a call, even if no citations were issued. So in my report, I put a cat as the suspect and a calico as its race. I belong to an online neighborhood board. Some woman went off because people walk their dogs and the dogs poop on her lawn. We all agreed that not cleaning up after your dog is terrible. She clarified and said that everyone was picking up the poop but it was leaving germs on her lawn, so she called the police. So many. A woman found a half-eaten sandwich in her unfenced backyard. She thinks someone threw it there to poison her dog. She saved the sandwich and wanted us to test it for poison. A man called because his trampoline was blowing away in a windstorm. One woman called because someone stole her American flag from her front yard. One of those little tiny yard flags that are about 1 foot tall and plant in your grass. She called the morning after a particularly bad and windy thunderstorm. I had to explain to her that it's much more likely that the flag blew away than someone maliciously stole a 50-cent flag. I then found in a nearby sewer drain. My dog is acting strange, can you send a police officer? Happens more than you'd think. My favorite is people who call in because people are driving too fast through the neighborhoods. So we go out there and run radar. 9 times out of 10, the person caught speeding is the person who called in the complaint to begin with. I live in a neighborhood. I drive a black car and it looks sporty. So I routinely have moms with strollers telling me to slow down. And I'm always going 15 miles an hour under the speed limit. They got to where they would be waiting for me to come home to yell at me. They called the cops. The cops sat in the woods for apparently 2 weeks getting my speeds. I didn't know. I couldn't see them. Vale clocked me under every day going to work and back. They ended up telling the women to leave me alone or they would arrest them for harassment without me even asking him to do anything. I got pulled over a year ago for speeding, 10 miles per hour over the speed limit, and not 1, or 2, or 3, but 4 cop cars showed up to the scene. It was in my super suburban hometown, and I am a 5 feet 1 inch female, driving a non-tinted window, smaller SUV. I think I can speak for the 3 cops who were called that it was pretty freaking dumb. When I was 18 I was head over heels for a girl who was leaving the state for the summer. I called her and asked her to meet me at a local park. I took about 50 tea candles and spelled out her name. She thought the name and fire part of American Beauty was especially romantic. It took her a while to get there, and it was getting late. She finally arrived and we're having a moment straight out of a movie. Suddenly we're interrupted by a police car driving through the grass. We were back from the road, where a cement slab that used to be a picnic area was. I didn't want anything to set on fire, with his spotlight on us, siren, the whole deal. Now, we were just standing there holding hands and expressing our everlasting love for one another, nothing more. The cop approaches and calls for backup for 2 teenage girls in a park. 2 more cop cars show up and surround us. They then begin asking what kind of satanic ritual are you performing, where's the goat you were going to sacrifice, where's the rest of the cult, etc. Then they took our IDs and realized that it said her name. Then the conversation turned to berating us into us explaining our relationship to them. This went on for half an hour, and at one point I nervously put my hands in my pockets. I was scared, incredibly embarrassed, and had never had any encounter with police. I was trying not to cry in front of this girl. One cop put his hand on his gun and ordered to see my hands. At that point I was shaking like a leaf. I mean, really? One officer said something to urge the others to wrap it up, and since they had kept us until 12:08, they cited us both for park curfew violation. I was a poor kid growing up and still lived with my parents. Couldn't pay the $250, and went to jail. Thus began my fear of police, and the solidification of what it meant to be gay in a small town in Texas. TLDR, harassed by cops when trying to be romantic. Didn't get laid. That's it for today Team Astro. Have you ever had any similar stories like this? If you have, please let us know down in the comments section. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe for more videos. Please consider liking and sharing this video and support us. Daily space facts before you leave. The Andromeda Galaxy has an apparent magnitude of 3.4, which makes it bright enough to be seen by the naked eye on moonless nights. So go out and look for the galaxy.